Thanks for tuning in to CPA Life, where today we join John Randolph for part one of his unscripted conversation with accountant turned coach, Lisa Poslusny. They dive into mental health fitness for accounting professionals, exploring how to manage stress and burnout, the power of focusing on strengths over weaknesses, and why firms need to rethink talent strategies in today's market. Welcome to CPA Life.
Lisa, how you doing?
Hey, how are you, John? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Yes, I can.
Great. Well, thank you for reaching out with your message and for us being able to get together. It's great to meet you.
Absolutely. I mean, when I saw some of the stuff that you were doing and saw the space that you were playing in, so to speak, there's just a lot of that overlapped with what we do, what we focus on, the clients that we serve. And one of the biggest things that we kind of lean into is we've got to change the narrative in public accounting and have to be a little bit more in tune and understand that your dad's CPA firm of 10, 20, 30 years ago is not what's going to attract talent today.
Right.
And you've got to put their physical health, their mental health, their emotional well-being on a front burner. It's no longer something that you can just kick the can down the road.
Yep. Totally agree. And
so how did you end up in this space doing this?
Well, so I had wanted for quite some time, probably the last 5 years of my accounting finance career, really wanted to pivot into something related to health and wellness and well-being. In 2019, I had an opportunity there were some changes going on, and I was able to raise my hand and say, pick me. I'm happy to open up a spot. There was a merger going on, or an acquisition, I guess you should say. And so that really gave me, some of the financial space and time space to get my national board certification and functional health and wellness coaching certification. So I really just focused all my energy there. Pretty quickly into, getting into coaching clients about like the general health and wellness. I found an opportunity to learn about mental fitness. And ever since then, that's really been the foundation of my practice. So, even if somebody comes to me and, oh, I want you to help me lose weight or start an exercise program or anything like that, we start with the foundation with, just it's not that most people don't know what they should be doing. The real transformation is figuring out how to close that gap between, what you should be doing and why you're not doing it and how we can really bridge that. And that's what mental fitness really helps with. It's really all about how you approach challenges and approaching challenges with less stress, less anxiety, less avoidance, and more ease and flow. And really, it's a practice. So people build that muscle, and suddenly that gap between knowing and doing becomes smaller and smaller, and they just feel a lot more fulfilled. They feel a lot more excited about, either their career or their home life. And now, if people want to work with me, that's the prerequisite. We need to build that mental fitness. And it changed my life. When I left PHH, Aquin, whatever we were calling ourselves at that time, I thought, this is going to be it. Like, life is just going to feel so much different. And the truth of the matter is, a lot of that stress came along with me. So I had a lot of my own mental fitness building to do. So it's, yes, it's situational, right? Our circumstances are a factor, but it's more than just that. It's the internal circumstances that we need to focus on as well, especially in a world right now where there's so much that you can't control. It's really an essential skill. So that's how I got here.
It's interesting, talking about leaving PHH and realizing that you're bringing that with you. My wife and I have a marriage mentoring and marriage coaching discipleship program that we work with couples in. And it's funny because if we're working with a couple that's been married before, and the way that we kind of what we look for is, there are people out there that are great at deep dive therapy, marriage counseling, because
Mhm.
your marriage is on the rocks, someone's calling 911. That's not us. We love working with couples that kind of wake up one day and look around and go, you know what, we got a good marriage. We'd like a great marriage. How do
Mm,
we how do
mhm.
we make that happen? What do we do?
Yeah.
And if we're dealing with couples that have been married before, it's hilarious
Mhm.
because there's so much of that baggage that they didn't deal with in that marriage that they've just brought into this one.
Sure.
Or or maybe this is their first marriage, but they've just continually kicked the can down the road of just dealing with some junk that's in their lives
Mhm.
individually or as a couple.
Mhm.
And we were talking to a couple that we've been working with for a few months and they're getting ready to go on vacation. There's some things that we've been talking to them about, needing to talk about. And they're like, well, we just think if we can get away on vacation and get away from all this chaos, blah, blah, blah. I said, you
Mhm.
realize really all you're doing is you're going to pack your bags. And even though you don't realize there's a corner of your bags that you're going to put all this crap in, you're going to
Yeah.
take it on vacation with you. You're just going to get to argue about it in a much prettier scenery. That's really
Yeah.
it. It's still
Yeah.
there. You got to
Yeah.
deal with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's so
True.
true. We think that we're going to leave that stuff behind, and so
Mhm.
much of it just ends up coming with us, like you're talking about.
Yeah. 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 It really, once you can gain that awareness and really see how it's our own internal thought patterns or memories from the past or whatever it may be that are really influencing the way we feel, then you can do something about it, right? You can't do something about something you don't see. So
Yeah.
it's about gaining awareness. And it's interesting too, because and I've been noodling around. I'm like, oh, I need to create some content around this. I heard somebody say, and now I can't even remember who it is, like, you're one insight away from changing your life. And I'm like, but are you really? Like, there's a lot of insights, right? You need to
Yeah.
do something about it, right? You need to have the awareness, yes, but there's so many insights coming at us that are you really following through on anything? And that's why I love working with people with mental fitness, because like we can use the gym analogy, right? You can't just, looking at the weights and seeing them there is not going to build your muscle. You gotta have a plan to lift them, and you have to stay consistent. You don't just do it for a week and say, I'm done. So, this really helps take that awareness to the next step and make it a part, a habit of really focusing on your mental fitness. So,
How did you evolve into working predominantly, and I'm assuming that's what you do because that's what your LinkedIn profile said, but
yeah.
how did you
Mhm.
evolve into the space where, hey, my marketplace is accounting professionals
Mm.
versus engineers or lawyers or just anyone in general?
Right, right. So, to be honest, at first I was very hesitant to work with accounting and finance professionals because I was like, well, who am I? Like, I left. Like, why am I going to leave that world and say, now I'm going to tell you how you can survive, better in that world without,
Hmm.
sacrificing your health and wellness? And part of that realization that brought me back to, well, no, these are people that I've been in their shoes. I know how they're feeling. I know that feeling of, well, I'm just stuck. There's nothing I can do. I have all this pressure. I have all these deadlines. I've felt that way. And now, especially that seeing how it wasn't just the change in my circumstances that made me feel more
Mm.
fulfilled and lighter and happier and healthier, that just reinforced, like, no, I know that I can take these tools, these strategies, and help the people that were where I once was. Now, do I work exclusively with accounting and finance professionals? No, I have clients that are not accounting and finance professionals that, I've interacted with or I've connected with in other
Right.
ways. But I really do feel like there is great opportunity to help the people that are in these high pressure roles. Like, not that accounting and finance are the only high pressure roles out there, obviously, but I've been there.
Hmm.
I can truly say I've been in the shoes. I've worked in public accounting. I've worked in corporate accounting. I've, done other things outside of accounting, bigger projects for large companies. So I get it.
Are there tools or resources that you work with or lean into from the standpoint of, from lack of a better way to put it, testing or, skills-based analysis or strengths-based analysis, really, I should say. Is there
Ah.
any kind of personality profiles or things like that that you lean into when you work with people to get a better handle on, hey, who's at the core of this individual?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so through the mental fitness program that I facilitate, which is positive intelligence, we actually have what we call a saboteur assessment. And the saboteurs are those automatic negative thought patterns that we all have that are generally holding us back, right? And interestingly enough, our saboteurs are actually a reflection of our strengths. So
Mm,
they're essentially our overused strengths. For example, one of my top saboteurs is what we call the stickler. So I can, if I'm not careful, I could spend hours and hours on a LinkedIn post and, oh, I don't want to say it that way. Is it perfect? Oh, what about the image? Let me do it again. Could totally do that. That's when my strengths of attention to detail and wanting to do the right thing and putting out a good product are in the hands of my saboteur. But
mm,
when I'm using my strengths optimally for me, there are instances, it's not 100% of the time, maybe 20% of the time, where attention to detail is really needed. So lots of accountants that I work with, no surprise, they have a very high stickler saboteur, but it's not a matter of taking those strengths and saying that not using them at all. It's a matter of putting them into balance and recognizing when they're being overused and abused. So
hmm.
that in effect, this saboteur assessment is that type of personality. It's somewhat personality based. And then occasionally what I will do with some clients, it depends on the client. The work I do is very personalized, not everybody's into it, but I will also have them do a Gallup strengths assessment.
Uh-huh.
And then we can dive deeper into their strengths. And when they see how those strengths align with the saboteurs, it really can become a powerful, just target for them to work towards. Like, hey, yeah, these strengths are great, and I want to keep them in the right hands, not
Yeah.
not overusing and abusing them. So together, those can be very, very effective.
So I recently hired a recruiter that has a life coaching business on the side. Been a recruiter for years, and ironically in the mortgage space, and lost a couple of large clients over the last few years. Done this for a long time, and I was looking for a recruiter. A friend of mine knew her, introduced us, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Look, I've run my own show for 20 years, and I just don't have it in me to go back out in the marketplace and build something again. I've lost two
Mm.
large clients, and I really want to do a little bit more life coaching stuff. And I've got about 20 to 30 hours a week that I can lean into recruiting, but I need somebody that can teach me and mentor me and work with me in a new vertical." And so anyway, she uses strength finders in her coaching work that she does. I'm familiar with the Gallup Strength Finders, and I've got a lot of clients that have used it, but I've never done it, and I've never
Mhm.
really dug into it. So
Mm.
one of the things that she did around Christmas time as a Christmas gift to me was send me this book.
Yeah. Hmm.
So I've got to a point yesterday finally that I am now at taking the assessment. But it was really interesting to me reading the first part of the book, just the whole concept and thought about, and I never really thought about it this way, Lisa. I never really processed it this way. How much time as individuals and as leaders
Hmm.
and people in general, how much time we spend focusing our energies on getting better at the things that are not our strengths.
Yeah.
And the thing that kept coming back into my mind is years ago, I worked for a recruiting firm you may be familiar with, Kforce. And I went to work for Kforce when it was the predecessor company was a company called Romac International. And at that time, we were a $30 million privately held 10, 12 office entity. Within 2 years, we went public, did a secondary offering, did a third offering, grew to 800 million in revenue, did
Wow.
32 acquisitions. So we grew a ton in that time frame. And through that growth, we had a big delta in leadership.
Mm.
So we went out, we hired some consultants. They brought together the top 20 performing individuals and leaders in the company and really basically just did everything but open up our brains for 2 weeks and do all kinds of assessment testing and stuff on us.
Mm.
And I can't even begin to tell you the time, energy, and effort coming out of that 2 weeks that was put into working on the things with the senior and executive leadership team that we were on the things that we weren't good at. So one of mine was as a product line leader and a right brain guy, I just am naturally not an analytical person.
Mhm.
I worked with two trainers and coaches for almost 2 years learning how to be that person. Now, I'm not saying that that skill wasn't needed. I'm not saying that didn't need to be
Right.
done. But we spent 2 years on that.
Yeah.
2 years. And never once did we talk about, hey, these are the things that you're solid at. How can we go deeper and wider on these to
Yeah.
bring more impact to the organization and to you personally?
Yeah.
And that was just so, I mean, reading this book, it was just so resounding to me how we do that. We do it as
Yeah.
parents, we do it as spouses, we do it as coaches with our little league teams that we coach with our kids.
Mhm.
All of those things. That's what we do. That's what we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And
So
it's not necessarily the best use of your energy. You know,
yeah,
that's, one of the things that's like, okay, well, here are my responsibilities. Where are my energy drainers? And to what extent, can I delegate some of this? Or is there a way I can make it more energizing for me? Can I change the way I'm approaching it? And, sometimes, yeah, sure, we want to have a growth mindset, expand our skills, but there's a point. Is a 2-year investment worth it, or could that
yeah,
energy have been spent better elsewhere? Yeah.
absolutely. Could it have been better spent? Hey, we've got to work on these things with John if we want him to move up in the organization and run larger product lines. Yeah, he's got to be able to do this.
Right.
But you know, are there other people in a peer type situation where that is something that they are just wicked smart in,
Yeah.
but they're not highly communicative? They don't have
Right.
the greatest sales skills. And could we collaborate those two guys together and
Mm-hmm.
just watch magic happen?
Yeah.
I've got a client in Houston that when they started growing their firm 3 years ago, they were having such a hard time finding good quality, dependable people.
Mm.
And one of the things that they started doing, and it's not so much of a skill set, just a different mindset and methodology, but they leaned into the thought process of, hey, let's go find this forgotten workforce that
Mm.
people aren't really given a chance, and that is the stay-at-home moms that used to be
Mm.
accountants that maybe only want to work 15, 18, 20, 24 hours a week. And instead of us hiring one person and trying to just find the closest fit we can find at a 40-hour
Yeah.
a week, 50-hour a week person, let's go find two people that are just awesome people that all they want to work is this one wants to work 22 hours and this one wants to work 38. And we'll create one whole person and let them just go be magic.
Yeah.
They grew from right at about 1 million in revenue to almost 15 million in revenue in the last 4 years on that
Wow.
model. On that model,
Wow.
just
Wow.
finding people that were meeting people where they were at
Yeah.
and saying, hey, let's take that strength and let's turn it into an asset for us while also giving that person the life that they want to have. And I think firms that lean into that type of a mindset today are firms that are going to continue to do exceptionally well, hold on to their people, not just attract, but also
Yeah.
retain their top talent in the marketplace today.
Yeah. Wow. That is such a great example. I mean, how smart.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you end up fighting with everybody else for the exact same talent. I've got another client that I had a candidate reach out to me 3 months ago, something like that.
Hmm.
Tax director with a firm, been with them for 6.5 years. Prior to that, 3 years with a big four firm. And he called me. He's like, hey, I'm just going to shoot straight with you. I want to run my own firm. I want to
Mm.
build my own firm. I've talked to my firm about it and told them that I want to work for them for 40 hours a week for the next 2 years while I'm building my firm on the side. And they basically told me, nope, we're not going to let you do it. You work for
That's
us
what
and
I thought you
only
were going to
us.
say. Yeah.
Us and only us. And if you want to do anything else, there's the door. God love you.
Yeah.
We've enjoyed having you.
Yeah.
So he said, I want to find a firm that understands what I want to accomplish
Mhm.
and sees the value in what I can bring to them for 40 hours a week. I'm not going to pull any punches. I want to be honest with them, tell them what I want to do. I'll sign a non-compete. I won't take clients from them.
Right.
I'm gonna do everything I can to sell their firm while I'm working for them. I'll
Yeah.
be available in weird hours if I need to be, but this is what I want to do. And I will also give them, and you put it in my employment agreement, a 6 month out. So I will not resign and say, here's my 2 week notice. I'll resign and say, here's my 6 months notice. I got a
Right.
runway
Right.
now. It's what I want to do. I've probably talked to 13 firms, and all of them are firms that are dying for talent. And 12 of those 13 were like, nope, nope, don't want to do it, don't want to do it, don't want to do it. I had one firm say, explain that to me again, what he wants to do. And I explained it to him, and they're like, when can he start?
Wow.
Whenever you want to interview him. Like, we'd like to talk to him tomorrow. We'll talk to him tomorrow. And if he fits what we're looking for, we'll absolutely do that because the way we look at it, John, in today's marketplace, 18 to 24 months is about how long you're going to hold on to people.
Right. Right.
So if
Yeah.
he's willing
Yeah.
to agree to work for us for 2 years and give us a 6 month exit, we will
Mm.
absolutely work with that.
Mm.
And that's what they did.
You know
I
what,
mean,
John? I think if you, you were just tying this back to you were saying about like I'm not like that. I don't have that analytical brain, right? So somebody with like a hyper analytical or hyper rational, as we call it in mental fitness, wouldn't have gotten to that 13th, like wouldn't have made that connection. And
mhm.
you made such a perfect finding that perfect fit. It's just
Yeah,
amazing. Just
yeah.
amazing.
I think it's just the simple mindset of looking at this and go, look, there's a problem here, and that problem
Mm-hmm.
is talent. And there's an individual here that has that talent, but his story is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's unique. And, even through the process, Lisa, he interviewed with the chief operating officer who had him interview with the CEO. And what came out of that initial interview was a lot of, if you're looking at, hand in glove, it was more like this coming out of that interview.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
And it didn't look like it was going to come together. And the more that so the candidate called and he and I talked, and there were some things that he said that they said that it didn't sound right. And I talked to them, and there were some things that they said that he said that didn't sound right. And luckily, we had set up the interview, and it was a Zoom interview. And so when we set things up, it runs through our AI note taker portal. So I could go
Hmm.
back and listen to the whole interview. And I listened to the
Yeah.
whole interview, and I went back to my client and I said, hey, let me tell you what I think the problem is. You interviewed this guy as a normal, everyday tax director that you want to hire to work for your firm. That's what you did.
Yeah.
Here's my application. I'm a tax director that wants to come to work for you. That's how you interviewed him. And that is not the situation.
Yeah.
And he went into this kind of with the same mindset because he's never interviewed for anything else. So there were thoughts that he had that he never said, and there were questions you had that you never asked.
Right.
So I said, I think we need to get back together, and this time
Yeah.
face to face because they're both in Dallas. I said, this time I think we need to get together face to face. You need to line out what your concerns are in this situation. He needs to line out for you, hey, whiteboard, if I drew this thing up, this is what it would look like. And then
Hmm.
you guys punch holes in it. And I
Yeah.
think that you'll come to a meeting of the minds. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did. But
Yeah.
I think it takes sometimes in this business where we're at today,
Hmm.
getting people to challenge conventional wisdom and challenge normal mindsets. um, 2 years ago, we have a client that I was working with a lot, and they were 5 days a week, 4 days a week in the office. And I kept pushing him and telling him, look, if you would open yourself up to looking at candidates, even if they're in the area, but they're not having to be in the office every day because they weren't in a very easy to commute to
Commute.
area.
Yeah.
And he kept saying no, kept saying no, kept saying no. And we had this conversation for 6 months, 7 months with positions still open. And he finally called me because I would ask him, tell me why you don't think it'll work. And he'd give me all kinds of, crazy reasons everybody says, culture, communication, they don't work as hard, all the stuff that if you dig enough, I mean, if I'm just of the mindset, if you look long enough, you'll find it, whatever it is, good or bad.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and he finally called me one day and he said, hey, I've been thinking about this whole remote thing, and I think I've come up with the real reason why this won't work. And I said, what's that? And he said, because I don't want it to.
Yeah.
And I said, you know
Well,
what?
that's honest.
I
Honest.
said,
Yeah.
that's the most honest and best reason you've given me.
Yeah.
And he said, but here's the second part of that, John. I don't think that's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Okay, we're making
Yeah.
progress. We're
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
So I just think that, again, from an overall mental health and mental mindset, and I'm sure that you see this, that for the industry to change, there's got to be some testing and pushing back
Mhm.
on conventional wisdom.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have so many examples to just prove that.
When you work with people in
Mhm.
your coaching, do you work with firms that refer people? Meaning, hey, I'm working with, just for argument's sake, hey, EY is a client. I'm working with some of their people that they're pointing this way. Or is it a situation of individual clients, or is it a little bit of both?
Right now, it's mostly individual clients. However, I mean, absolutely. I mean, my goal is to make connections with, smaller firms, even to really be able to serve their teams. That would be
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. I mean, the program, so I have individual one-on-one coaching, and then I have this 6-week program that is a part of that, or in addition to that, I should say. And I offer that either one on one, because sometimes people just are not willing to work in a group setting, but it really works beautifully in a group setting. Even if, I bring in a couple of people that want the group experience but don't know each other,
Mm-hmm.
or if sometimes it's people that do know each other and it just creates a different dynamic. They really get just so many unique benefits by going through the program with others. So, yeah, or, sometimes and then from there, they have the option to move on to one-on-one coaching. Once you have that foundation built, then there's so much you can do with it. You can apply it at work, you can apply it at home, you can apply it, you talked about, like, corporate change management, you can apply it to parenting. It's really quite universal. And what happens a lot of times is, people may start this work from a professional standpoint, wanting to
Mm-hmm.
improve their performance at work, or, maybe in some cases preventing, stress and burnout, depending upon where they are in the spectrum. And then they realize, they're acting different at home, and their spouse is noticing how they're acting differently at home. And, their friends are noticing, like, hey, how are you handling this situation so well? Like, you should be in tears by now. Like, I've had clients come back to me and just describe this ripple effect that's really, really wonderful, and really what, further reinforces that this has got to be a key part of my coaching. Yeah. Or I do also too, like, some corporate workshops, if for like company retreats, I've spoken at a couple of those types of things, or like, women in finance conferences. KinderCare has a quarterly conference. I spoke to their women in finance last year. Yeah, I mean, really, any opportunity that I have to spread the word about mental fitness and how it can really have an impact on your life, I'm open to it. Always open to new things.
When you look at the accounting profession today,
Mhm.
what do you think some of the biggest mental slash emotional challenges are that accountants are faced with today that may be different than what you juggled and dealt with 25 years ago?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, oh, well, so a couple of things. I think a lot hasn't changed. And the reason why I'm going to say that, like, what's really driving it is because the biggest internal thought pattern that really messes with us is, we refer to it as the judge, the inner critic. Not only our inner critic, but the way we judge others and, how we relate to others and the way we judge circumstances. I've got a deadline. This is bad. We've got an audit issue. This is bad. It's all in that automatic, reaction to something not going your way or a misstep or somebody else's misstep. So I think that is universal, and that, is going to stand the test of time as being, something that needs to be addressed and intercepted. And then, like I said, a lot of accounting and finance professionals, it's going to be that stickler, or it's going to be that hyper rational that is only seeing the numbers, is not seeing the bigger picture, that's going to create more stress for themselves. So there's those specific types of thought patterns like that. Now, the reason why I kind of hesitate, for then versus now. So right now I have my daughter, she's 23. She works for Deloitte. She lets me even use her cup because it keeps my coffee nice and warm.
Nice.
I don't even think Deloitte gave me an interview back in the day. I interned for Cooper's and I worked for KPMG, but I will still use their cup. So I have a very unique perspective, and she's not an accountant. She's an economist. She works for the tax department, but she works in transfer pricing. And just experiencing, being a part of her experience as a new professional in a big firm like that, just with the way the world has changed. I mean, you talked about remote work. I mean, that's like a hot button, and, that pressure, I think more over the years, there's more of this, the grind and the hyper achievement and the high performer. I think that's, even more prevalent in this day and age than maybe it was back in the day as I experienced it. But everybody's different, right? Everybody's unique, and they have a unique way of responding to challenges. So yeah, the other half of what I was going to say about the now is I also have a junior accounting major in college that is looking for an internship, and, really seeing the fierce competition out there, and, being worried about AI. And what does that mean, right? What does that mean for young accountants coming out of school, or even, existing accountants? What does AI mean for anybody, but especially, when it comes to accounting and finance, where a lot of that there is threatening people's jobs, or forcing them to change, right? So
Right.
change is uncomfortable. So I think that today, more than, 25 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever, it's this environment of change and uncertainty that has really magnified things and really activates those saboteurs and those thought patterns that aren't serving you well.
So I've got this general hypothesis about the world that we live in today, and I think it's applicable. My hypothesis, not that it's fact, that it's applicable to the accounting profession and the stress in the profession today. Inevitably, you'll end up in discussions with people about, do you think there's more chaos in the world today? Do you think that there's more evil in the world today? Do you think there's, all of those questions that you get from people when the news starts, coming at us. And I've leaned to the fact that I don't think that the world is any different than it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100, 150 years ago. I don't think it's any different. I think the only difference is that we live in a world today that you know about everything within minutes of it happening. 50 years ago, there could have been a mother or a father that committed some heinous act on their family. You and you're in Pennsylvania, right?
I'm in New Jersey, but close to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'm outside of Philly. Yeah.
You in New Jersey, me in Texas, we would never know about it. Never.
Yep.
We would never know about it. Today, we hear about it at the latest 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock news, at the latest. Yeah. More than likely, we hear about it within hours of it happening, constantly.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the culture is any different in public accounting than it was. And I keep talking about public accounting because that's the space we play in.
Sure.
I don't believe the culture, large scale, is any different than it used to be in public accounting 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. I believe it's the same. The only difference is that between Going Concern and Reddit and Tax Twitter and all of those other platforms, Everyone has a voice. The way that I put it is that 50 to 100 years ago, we had a finite number of microphones in this world. And you had to prove worthy and responsible to have one of those microphones.
Sure.
In the world we live in today, everyone has a microphone, and you do not have to prove that you are worthy of it.
Thanks for tuning in to part 1 of John Randolph's candid, unscripted conversation with Lisa Poslusny. Part 2 will air March 4th. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and head to cpalifepodcast.com to get in touch or for links and show notes. We'll see you next time on CPA Life. ProfessionalProductions.net